Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you were walking on eggshells around someone you love? One minute, they're close, the next, they pull away. You start replaying every text, every glance, every silence, wondering what you did wrong. But here's the truth, it's not about you. It's about fear. And if you learn how to speak to that fear, not feed it, you can turn even the most avoidant person into someone who feels safe enough to stay. When people pull away, our instinct is to chase. We text more, we analyze, we try harder. But chasing triggers their fear of losing control, and that fear makes them run faster. So if you want an avoidant person to commit, you have to do the opposite of what your panic tells you. You have to stand still. Because commitment doesn't start with convincing someone else to stay. It starts with showing them that you're not a threat to their freedom. That you're not going to smother, fix, or demand them into love. You're going to invite them into it. Avoidant people aren't afraid of love. They're afraid of losing themselves in it. So if you want them to stop pulling away, give them the one thing they crave but rarely get: emotional safety. That means calm energy. That means boundaries. That means showing up without pressure, without panic, and without proving. And when they see that love with you doesn't mean losing themselves, it means finding peace, that's when they commit. Not because they have to, but because they want to. When someone with avoidant tendencies starts to pull away, your instinct screams at you to close the gap. You feel that tightening in your chest, that wave of anxiety that says, if I don't do something right now, I'll lose them. So you text, you call. You replay every conversation trying to find what went wrong. But what you're really doing is chasing your own fear, not fixing the relationship. Casing is a way of saying, I can't handle this uncertainty. And that energy only reinforces what the avoidant person already believes. That closeness equals pressure, and pressure equals danger. The harder you reach, the faster they retreat. The antidote isn't chasing them, it's centering yourself. When they pull away, you don't react, you recalibrate. You take a breath, you notice that voice inside saying, I'm not enough. And instead of letting it drive your behavior, you ground yourself in truth. You remind yourself that their space doesn't mean rejection, it's a regulation mechanism. Avoidant people pull back because that's how they protect their nervous system from feeling overwhelmed. It's not personal, even though it feels deeply personal. When you stop interpreting their distance as proof that you did something wrong, you stop feeding the cycle of anxiety that keeps both of you stuck. Centering yourself means learning to hold still in moments of uncertainty. It's not about ignoring them or playing games. It's about emotional stability. Think of it like being the calm in the storm. When someone is spiraling internally, the most powerful thing you can do is bring a steady energy. That steadiness communicates, you're safe, I'm safe. There's no rush. It's what helps an avoidant person slowly unlearn their reflex to disappear. Because what they fear most isn't you. It's losing control of themselves in the connection. Your stillness shows them they don't have to choose between love and freedom. In those moments, focus on your own grounding. Instead of writing that long message asking if they're mad at you, take a walk. Breathe deeply. Do something that connects you back to yourself: journaling, working out, meditating, calling a friend who doesn't fuel your panic. Remind yourself that the situation doesn't define your worth or your value. You're not being punished. You're being invited to grow your emotional regulation. The more you learn to stay centered, the less power their withdrawal has over your peace. Here's the real shift. When you stop chasing, you change the energy between you. They start to feel the difference. Suddenly, there's no pressure, no silent demand for closeness. Just space filled with calm, grounded presence. That's when curiosity replaces fear. They start to lean in, not because you convinced them, but because your energy feels safe. Emotional safety is the foundation of connection, and it starts with you. You can't expect someone else to feel secure around you if you're not secure within yourself. So every time you feel the urge to chase, take it as a cue. Not to reach for them, but to return to you. Avoidant people don't run from love itself. They run from the feeling of being trapped, judged, or consumed by it. They associate closeness with loss of control. When someone comes at them with too much intensity, even if it's coming from genuine affection, their nervous system interprets it as danger. They start to feel suffocated, like their independence is slipping away, and instinctively they create distance to breathe. The mistake most people make is trying to close that distance with more love, more reassurance, more effort. But what actually builds connection with an avoidant person isn't more intensity, it's more safety. Being safe means your energy feels grounded, calm, and predictable. You're not emotionally volatile or constantly looking for reassurance. You're not demanding closeness or proof of commitment. You're showing up as someone who values the relationship but doesn't depend on it to feel whole. That steadiness tells their subconscious, you can relax. This person isn't here to control or overwhelm you. And once their body starts to trust that message, their heart follows. Because underneath all that avoidance is the same human desire for connection. It just needs to unfold in an environment that feels non-threatening. Safety also comes from how you communicate. Avoidants are incredibly sensitive to tone and energy. They can feel when there's tension behind your words, even if you're smiling. So when you approach them from anxiety, trying to fix things, get answers, or force reassurance, they feel cornered. Instead, speak calmly, clearly, and without expectation. If you're upset, own your feelings without turning them into demands. Say something like, I'm feeling disconnected right now, so I'm going to take a little time to regroup. I just wanted you to know it's not about punishing you. That communicates self-awareness and control, not emotional chaos. Another way to feel safe instead of smothering is to let them come to you. When they take space, don't fill it with questions or constant check-ins. Give them room to breathe and trust that the connection can survive without constant contact. That trust communicates security. Avoidants often grew up in environments where closeness meant losing their boundaries, so when you give them the gift of space without guilt, it rewires their expectations. They begin to believe that love can exist without control, and that realization is what allows them to start leaning closer. Being safe also means respecting the pace of the relationship. Some people move fast, craving constant emotional connection, while avoidants move slow, needing time to process and regulate. When you rush them, they retreat. When you meet them at their pace, they open. Your calm patience becomes an anchor they can rely on. Over time, they stop associating intimacy with pressure and start associating it with peace. And when love feels peaceful, they no longer have to protect themselves from it. That's when they start to stay, not because they've been convinced, but because with you, they finally feel safe enough to. Words can say one thing, but energy always tells the truth. When you're dealing with someone who's avoidant, they don't just listen to what you say. They feel how you say it. Their nervous system is wired to pick up on tension, expectation, or emotional pressure. You could be saying, it's fine, take your time, but if your tone is tight, your breathing is shallow, and your eyes are filled with fear, they won't hear reassurance. They'll hear danger. Avoidant people have spent years learning how to protect their emotional space, and they do that by reading energy faster than words can reach them. That's why the real communication isn't in what you say. It's in the energy you bring when you say it. When your energy is anxious, everything you do feels like a grab for control. When your energy is calm, everything you say becomes an invitation for connection. The difference isn't in the script, it's in the state you're in while delivering it. So before you try to talk things out, center yourself. Take a moment to breathe, drop your shoulders, slow down your pace. Speak from your grounded self, not your fearful one. This is how you build trust with someone who's used to protecting themselves from emotional intensity. They start to realize you're not going to flood them with need or expectation. You're someone who can hold space, not just fill it. Matching words with energy also means practicing emotional congruence. That's when your words and your inner state line up. If you're upset, don't pretend you're fine. That creates confusion and emotional noise. Instead, express your truth in a grounded, non-blaming way. You might say, I'm feeling a little distant lately, and I want to make sure we stay connected, but I also want to respect your space. That's honesty without tension. You're not asking for reassurance, you're sharing awareness. This approach disarms their defenses because it doesn't make them responsible for your emotional balance. It shows maturity, clarity, and stability, qualities that make an avoidant person feel safer. Energy alignment also happens through body language. Keep your posture open, your voice steady, and your facial expressions relaxed. Avoidants often read physical cues before verbal ones. A relaxed tone says, you're safe here. A sigh, a raised eyebrow, or a defensive stance says, I'm bracing for rejection. The more emotionally attuned you become, the more they trust your presence. They don't need perfection, they need consistency. Your consistency tells them that they can rely on your emotional tone even when things get hard. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about regulating it. You can feel everything deeply and still express it in a calm, grounded way. When you do that, your energy tells a story of safety instead of urgency. And that story is what an avoidant person needs to believe before they can lean into love. When they feel your energy matching your words, steady, sincere, and safe, they stop looking for exits and start looking for connection. Respecting an avoidant person's autonomy is one of the most powerful ways to build lasting connection. Avoidant individuals often grew up in environments where their independence wasn't respected, where emotional closeness came with hidden conditions or expectations. They learned early that when someone got too close, it meant losing their sense of control. So now, as adults, when they feel that same pressure, even if it's coming from genuine love, they instinctively withdraw to protect themselves. The moment they sense someone trying to fix, change, or help them open up faster than they're ready, they feel unsafe. Respecting autonomy means you stop trying to manage their emotional process and start trusting them to handle it in their own way and time. When you give them space without resentment, you're communicating something incredibly healing. I trust you to take care of yourself. That message might sound simple, but it's transformative for someone who's used to relationships filled with expectations. When they feel that their freedom isn't threatened, their walls start to soften. They no longer see you as someone trying to control them, but as someone who understands them. And in that understanding, trust grows. Autonomy and intimacy don't cancel each other out, they reinforce each other. The more a person feels free to be themselves, the safer they feel to connect. Respecting their autonomy also means allowing them to experience emotional distance without taking it personally. If they need time alone, let them have it. Don't ask, "Why are you pulling away?" or "Did I do something wrong?" Instead, remind yourself that space doesn't equal rejection. It's their way of maintaining balance. When you react to their distance with calm acceptance instead of panic, you teach them that love doesn't mean losing freedom. You're showing them that they can be themselves, introverted, private, self-protective, and still be accepted. That's what begins to shift their internal wiring. It's also about letting go of the urge to fix them. Many people fall into the trap of thinking, if I just love them enough, they'll open up. But love isn't a strategy to change someone, it's an environment that allows them to grow at their own pace. When you stop trying to solve their avoidance, you give them the space to take responsibility for their side of the connection. That's how true intimacy forms, not from one person doing all the emotional labor, but from both people feeling empowered to show up as themselves. Respecting autonomy doesn't mean emotional detachment. It means balanced connection, loving someone without losing yourself or trying to control their rhythm. When you create a relationship where both people feel free to breathe, honesty flourishes. Avoidant people begin to realize that closeness doesn't mean surrendering their independence. It means sharing it. And once they understand that being with you doesn't cost them their freedom, commitment stops feeling like confinement and starts feeling like choice. Emotional maturity is the quiet strength that changes every dynamic in a relationship, especially with someone who tends to be avoidant. It's not about being perfect or never feeling triggered. It's about being aware of your emotions and choosing how you respond instead of letting those emotions drive your actions. Avoidant people are extremely sensitive to emotional chaos. They've often learned that vulnerability leads to pain or rejection, so they protect themselves by keeping distance. When they meet someone who can stay calm, patient, and grounded even when things get uncomfortable, it challenges everything they believe about closeness. They start to see that connection doesn't have to be draining or dangerous. Emotional maturity means you don't take their behavior personally. When they pull away, instead of spiraling into self-blame or trying to chase them, you pause. You recognize that their distance is a reflection of their fear, not your worth. You understand that everyone regulates emotions differently, and giving space isn't abandonment. It's part of how they find safety. That level of understanding builds trust because it shows you're not reacting out of insecurity. You're responding with awareness. And that awareness tells them, you don't have to manage my emotions. I've got me. For someone who fears being responsible for another person's emotional state, that message is powerful. Being emotionally mature also means communicating without weaponizing feelings. It's about being honest without guilt, tripping, or blaming. You can express your needs clearly while respecting theirs. For example, instead of saying, "You never open up to me," you can say, "I feel more connected when we share what's going on inside, but I understand if you need time." This approach removes the pressure and invites openness without forcing it. Your emotional steadiness becomes a model for what healthy connection looks like: patient, compassionate, and stable. Another part of emotional maturity is self-regulation. When an avoidant person withdraws, it can trigger deep feelings of rejection or abandonment. The key is to soothe yourself instead of seeking immediate reassurance. That might mean journaling, meditating, exercising, or spending time with friends, anything that brings you back to your emotional center. The more you can calm your own nervous system, the more safety you project. Avoidant people can sense when someone is emotionally secure, and that security helps them lower their guard. They start to realize they can trust your presence because you don't need them to fix your feelings. Emotional maturity turns you into an anchor in the relationship. You stop riding the waves of their moods and start becoming the steady shore they can return to. You understand that love isn't about control. It's about connection built on respect, patience, and understanding. And when an avoidant person feels that level of emotional safety, commitment becomes less about risk and more about relief. They finally experience love not as pressure, but as peace. And that's when they choose to stay. When it comes to love, especially with someone who tends to be avoidant, the goal isn't to chase, convince, or fix. It's to create an environment where safety replaces fear. The truth is, commitment doesn't come from pressure, it comes from peace. When you stop reacting and start centering yourself, when you replace intensity with calm, when your words align with your energy, when you respect their autonomy, and when you lead with emotional maturity, you stop triggering their defenses and start awakening their trust. That's when the entire dynamic shifts. An avoidant person doesn't need you to prove your love. They need to feel that love isn't a trap. And that starts with how you show up. Every time you stay grounded instead of panicking, every time you give space instead of chasing, every time you speak from peace instead of fear, you're teaching them that love can be safe, steady, and freeing. You're showing them that being close doesn't mean losing control. It means gaining connection. Real commitment doesn't come from trying to hold someone tighter. It comes from building something solid enough that they want to hold on. The moment love stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling like partnership, even the most avoidant heart will stop running. Not because you caught them, but because they finally feel safe enough to stay. Thank you for being here, for choosing to grow instead of repeat old patterns, and for having the courage to look at love through a new lens. Remember, you don't have to chase anyone to keep love. You just have to stand so confidently in your peace that the right person recognizes it as home. Thank you for listening. Take care of your energy, trust your strength, and go be the calm that makes love feel safe again.